Thank you. So I'll start at 12:05 so that others can join also. Any questions from the previous lecture? Any confusions? Okay. So can anyone tell me what did we discuss in the last lecture? What can you remember from the last lecture? What was the theme of our lecture in the last week? Anyone wants to recapitulate for the entire class? Anyone? Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
So can anyone please tell all of us what we discussed in the last lecture? What do you remember from the last lecture?
Everyone sees the problem in different way. Like the manager saw that is the problem of machinery, and the developer saw it, or the worker saw it as a problem of lubricant.
Okay. Was it Tarun?
Yes.
Okay, Tarun, try to speak a bit clearly. Okay, your voice breaks in between, so the reception at the this end is thwarted. So I heard you saying we talked about understanding of the problem from different points of view. Thank you. Anyone else wants to add something to that? What do you guys remember from the last lecture that we discussed? It is very important to remember what we have learned in our lectures. Yes.
Am I audible now?
Yes, you are.
Yes, ma'am. We talked about how different people see a same problem as different things, or how managers saw the same problem as the problem with machinery, and the employee saw it as a problem with lubricant.
Okay, and so we learned about the different ways in which a same problem can be perceived. And there are no right and wrong ways or right and wrong answers when a group of people are trying to perceive a problem. Nanil mentions in the chat that we understood about understanding the problem. And who will tell me what is the significance of understanding the problem? Why is understanding a problem important?
Because if we get into it without understanding, we may lose our resources, time, and many other things.
Right, now I'll have to pick up students to answer because I want all of you to participate. So who else would like to add to Tarun's answer on why we need to understand the problem?
Ma'am, may I speak?
Of course, yeah.
Ma'am, understanding the problem and the thorough feel of the requirement is important, as because when we go through it, basically 90% of the solution is in front of us when we understand the problem thoroughly.
Yeah. Okay. So can anyone recall any previous times in their school times or even college when they spent time understanding the problem and then worked on solution? Do you have any experience to share with us? So Prasad mentions forming solution without understanding problem causes inefficient solutions. Yes. So when we talk about inefficient solutions, we should also be very careful about how we will measure the solutions. Remember, we talked about how to evaluate the solutions. So until and unless we know how to evaluate solutions, we wouldn't know what to do with our solution when our solution is made up, right? So to decide
Yes.
whether the solution is efficient or inefficient, we must be able to design a criteria right at the beginning of our software, that how we will assess the solution. Jay mentions that for a long time workable solution, deep understanding of a problem is necessary. Right. Anyone else wants to speak? I would like to hear from the girls. What is your understanding of the importance of problem in software development? How many girls are there in the class in computer science?
Less than 10.
What is the number of girl students in this class?
We are 4 of us now.
Okay. So can any one of you please share your thoughts on why understanding a problem is important in software development domain or any domain in general?
Yes, ma'am. We need to understand the importance of the problem. It's very important because, as most of the students already mentioned, that we need to understand first of all the audience also, like what problem we are trying to solve and for whom. We also need to understand who it is going to address to, because that matters a lot. Like if it's for an urban population, it needs to be addressed differently. If we do not understand these aspects of a problem, the solution may not even have that results which it should have, because we did not consider all these aspects. So work on the problem first, and we have experienced this in our first project, which you headed, Ideathon, in first year. And yes, that's what we did in our project too, that we try to understand that this is the group we want to target, and that made solving it so much easier, because now we knew that this is the mindset we want to target and this is how they are going to tackle it. If we have a larger domain, then make sure that you consider all those aspects.
Thank you, Ria. That was a very well articulated response, and I'm sure people understood, all the students understood what the central message was. So understanding the problem basically helps us preserve our resources and energy in the long term. So if we directly end up working on the problem without even understanding it, we are bound to have a Pyrrhic victory in the long term. So that is why understanding a problem is important. But now, having understood the importance of understanding the problem, another question that arises is, what are the right problems? Or are we solving the right problems? Nothing could be more disastrous than the fact that you have understood the problem, but sometimes you end up finding that you were solving a problem that was of not much relevance, that was irrelevant. And then most of the times when you end up getting the solutions and everything is working, still you're not finding the expected response from the people. Then you sit in your desk scratching your head, said what went wrong. And that is why understanding the problem and if the problem is right or wrong are two things that go closely together, hand in hand. And today we will try to understand the other aspect of problems, that are we trying to, or do we understand what the right problems are, and how do we distinguish them from the other set of problems. And we also will learn how to reframe a problem. So for example, Ria's view of viewing the problem may be very different from the way Jasraj views the problem. And that is why reframing of problems comes into picture. So that will be the theme of our lecture. So the question is, are you solving the right problems? So most companies in the real world, they struggle not with problem solving, but figuring out what problems are. So, most of the companies employ excellent coders, software developers and programmers, but and they're really good at doing when they're told what to do. However, when a company is looking for innovation and rapid excellence in its own sector, it needs not only people who can do what they are told to do, but also who can think what is to be done and why that specific thing has to be done. And that is where we come to the point of trying to glean the problems from a set of problems. So there was this recent survey that was done by the previous company that I had mentioned in the last lecture. They found out, and they did this survey for 106 C-suite executives who represented 91 private and public sector companies. across 17 countries. And they found that 85% strongly agreed that their organizations were bad at problem diagnosis. And the result of which it was reflected in the fact that 87 strongly agreed that this flaw carried significant costs. So costs could be obviously monetary, financial, or even time-based cost, because when you are working in a corporate sector or any other sector, which is a commercial-based company where profit is the main goal, time can be determining factor in making profit or loss. So I hope you take a moment to understand that this is not just a single statistics I am pointing out here. It is a fact, a naked fact in front of your eyes, that most of the employees working in the company and most of the companies have a hard time trying to really discover the right problems. So right problems means identifying problems in a much more accurate and factual manner. And right at the beginning, if things don't go as planned in a systematic manner, then obviously, as one of you mentioned in the chat box, the solutions will be inefficient. And this company also found a very peculiar survey. From the survey, a pattern that engineers often switch quickly to solution mode without checking whether they really understand the problem. So you have finished, I think, 2 years in the engineering college, and you may have worked on certain projects yourself. When you look back at your attitude in working on those projects and your journey throughout the project, how closely do you relate to this statement that I have highlighted? Switching quickly to solution mode without checking whether you really understood the problem or not. Does anyone want to share their experiences with us? So have you guys done any project in these 2 years? How many projects have you done, like collectively, as part of the curriculum?
4 projects.
4 to 5 projects.
4 to 5 projects.
4 to 5 projects.
So, okay. So when you reflect back on your attitude in the project and the highlighted line, so do you feel it is true or it's not so true when you look at your own project journeys? What do you think?
So true. We actually do it without knowing. It's actually true. So after
Okay.
reading
Could
it,
you please try to speak loudly?
hello.
Yes, yes. Try to speak in the microphone.
Yes, it's true that we, after knowing the question, we find some of the implementation on the internet and we just follow it without understanding.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Tarun. So in the chat, Atharv and Pratik also say it's true. But what I'm looking for is not just a true-false answer. What I'm also looking is that you reflect that why do you find it true? So Atharv, why do you say it's true? What led you to believe that it is true as per your experiences? Or Pratik, why do you think it's true? What are your reflections on that? All right. So hopefully, I want you to take a moment and pause and think over that, why was it? Why was the fact that, you switched quickly to solution mode without checking whether you really understood the problem? Now that you're saying that the observation is true, I'm pushing you to ask that what led you to quickly switch on to solution mode instead of trying to understand the problem? What triggered you to do that? So Tarun says, to get something done, we start with ambiguousness in hope of understanding it as time progresses. Yes, it works in certain cases, but we cannot always start with total ambiguity. We have to have a somewhat understanding of where we are going. Garvit says most of the time, in order to add some feature to our projects, we simply jump into source code already present on the internet, yes, rather than understanding and implementing it on our own. So Garvit, may I take this opportunity to ask you, what really triggers the students to simply jump to the source code without trying to understand? We choose a topic to work on it, and at the time of evaluation, we have question about the methodology and about choosing a topic. Yeah, so one of the main things about such kind of approach could be the way we are assessed. We are mostly assessed, and it's not just about a particular university. Mostly we are assessed on some tangible results, and that is important, but oftentimes we are not really evaluated on how we reached or really accomplished that point of how we arrived at those solutions. So that thinking or critical thinking, which is extremely skilled to have in 21st century, is not focused upon. Then Adharv says, because I didn't think about whole project working, I just thought to create basic work and I switched to solution mode. You see, when we directly switch to solution mode, what happens is that it becomes very difficult to branch out our minds in different directions we could have gone if we would have thought of the problems, and that is how innovation happens. So when we are just focusing on getting the solution, sometimes we are so this is called as a tunnel vision. You must have also read it in the papers. So when we have a sort of a tunnel vision, it becomes really very difficult to see how the solutions and the problems may also branch out. And when we cease to think about branching out, or when we cease to sit with the problem and ponder over it, then we miss out on certain great lessons that we can learn while working on the problem. And otherwise, when we are solving a problem A and we want to it solved, then we end up, our journey is finished when we get the solution A. However, if we are thinking it in a multiple manner, then not only that project is finished, but one project leads to another, and that leads to iterative learning. And that is the beauty of thinking over a problem. And because learning is a consistent goal, so it should be like one problem leads to another, that leads to certain other kind of lessons, and then so it's like a hierarchical type of learning is going on. So I'm happy that at least you guys are participating on the chat, and your views are extremely important to me. Others says that it might be more true in cases when we are doing a project given to us by some third party, because 4 or 5 projects we did our own ideas and create. So I think it was not a big issue in those projects. Yes. So when someone expects us to do a particular task, then definitely, especially in IT sector also. So there are 2 types of projects that always keep on going in parallel. One is brainstorming, ideation, and other is maintaining the brownfield software. So there are 2 types of projects: greenfield projects and brownfield projects. Greenfield projects are those which are have to be started from the scratch. Everything has to be designed, the architecture, planning, and everything. The brownfield projects in IT sector or in any other sector are those which have already a code, mostly a legacy code, and you are mostly working on fixing the bugs in the code. All right. And Prasad mentions that in coding, we tend to ignore constraints initially because of our overconfidence or overexcitement, only to find that those constraints can change the whole solution. I think this realization right in the 3rd year is very significant for you, because when we know where we are falling short, it is easier to mend those mistakes going forward. So hopefully now that you have recognized the problems, all of you, I hope that whenever next time you get an opportunity to work on codes or any problem, you will not directly start searching for the GitHub codes or Stack Overflow codes where you can accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. Okay. So our minds have been set up in such a way that we run to finish the project just to get them graded, and if we even work on project by thinking about it and working on it, no one grades that work. So it would be unfair to generalize that. But I know academic expectations. I'm sorry, that is one reason I don't like bikes with without silencers. Okay. So the thing is that academic expectations can sometimes, maybe delay your thinking if not prevent it. But even at the end of the day, you should always remember that ultimately it's your learning and you are the student. So ultimately what you want to get out of project. And it's not only about finishing a project, but actually using it as a springboard to launch into a deeper learning. And that can only happen when you broaden your vision and think much more than the tunnel vision. Okay, so I'm really happy for your responses, and even after class, I will go through them to understand deeper what you were trying to say. So now that we are aware of a pattern, let us try to consciously tell us that next time whenever we are working on a problem in school, colleges, or in our professional world, we will try to spend a bit of time trying to understand a problem, trying to see the constraints, and discuss with our managers, supervisors, or team members our 2 cents on the problem. Because it's the discussing and brainstorming that helps to understand the solution. So let me give an example. So recently I submitted a work in a portal and it was rejected. So when I read the rejection comments, I quickly thought that, okay, why was it not apparent to me earlier? And forced by the rejection, I re-looked at the problem. And then I understood that, hey, yes, definitely there was some problem that I had not looked at before. And so this is not a one-time process. It's a to and fro process, and it keeps on going as you proceed. And we will be talking about agile methodology in time to come. So there also you will see that project development or software development, it's a something that you keep on doing in an iterative manner, and that's all. So why organizations struggle to get it right? Sometimes we spend too much time engineering or diagnosing a problem. And so sometimes we become so sticky with the problem also. And so it's important to maintain a detached distance from the problem to be able to objectively see it. If we are too invested in the problem, then also it is quite problematic. And this is one of the observations of many of the consulting firms for organizations, that creative solutions always come from an alternative definition of a problem. So alternative definition of a problem means a different way to look at a problem. Now let's take an example. So you are living in a society, and that society has a very slow elevator. So all the residents in the society are very sad, and they are very angry, and they're complaining to the building manager that the slow elevator in the building is creating problems for them. So what do you think are the solutions? If you were the tenant over there, what could be the solutions according to you if you were living in the building with a slow elevator? So is the problem clear? Okay, so you could complain to authority. So what would be your complaint? And what would your possible solution? So as a tenant, what would be the solution given by you? That the elevator is slow. So what would be the solution that you would propose as a tenant? Okay. Get machinery checked for any fault. Yes. So you could do servicing for that fact. And so parts, that means that will involve money. So building managers will have to provide money to get that checked and repaired. Any other solution by anyone else? Prioritizing what? Prasad? Encourage the use of staircase. So what if the building had around 19 floors? Others, then what would you think of it? Prioritizing flow of crowd. So as a tenant, these are the solutions you think. Now, if you were the building manager and your tenants were to complain of the slow elevator, what would be your solutions? What would you say to them? Yeah, we could have. So upgrading the technology of elevator, again, it involves money. So money is involved, and building managers are aware that there is a problem, but they have not solved it. But now they can no longer ignore the problem. So what if you were to be the building manager, what would be your solution? Giving them something to pass time while waiting for their load. Yes, you're going close, just Raj. So what would giving them something to pass time do to their irritation? It would keep them engaged in something, and they would forget the so elevated problem. Yes, music could be one thing, definitely. Now you guys are thinking. Kind of game, yes. Mirrors, yes. So what the building managers did was, so you see, this is how the tenant look at the problem. The elevator is too slow. So that is how the tenants frame the problem. The elevator is too slow. And the solution according to them is make the elevator faster, install a new lift, upgrade the motor, improve the algorithm. So this is what the tenant is suggesting. Now the same problem when is looked by the building manager, he or she says, so this is the tenant overview, he or she says, so what the building manager does is they reframe the problem. So what looks like slow elevator to the tenants, the building managers do see, and rightly so, that the wait is annoying. So the tenants are getting annoyed at having to wait. And what do they do to change it or to make it better? They put up mirrors. So when the lift opens, maybe in the lift they put up mirrors, or when the lift opens in front, exactly, they put up mirrors, they play music and install a hand sanitizer. So what have they done here? These are very simple solutions. So as you compare of the solution that they have suggested, putting up mirrors, music, or installing a hand sanitizer, and you compare the monetary and financial value of these solutions with providing a new lift or upgrading the motor, what do you have to say? What do you think? These are easy. Yeah, these are convenient. And these are also smart. So they are cheap. Yeah, making them wait feel shorter could also short-term solution. Okay, so Parth, would you like to add? So how in long term it could backfire? So you mentioned it's a short-term solution. Yes. So definitely in long term, the tenants may want to catch their collars again to solve the problem. So that is why they might have to improvise also. So it may not last for the longer time, but it may provide building managers some time to ponder more over the problem. But I hope you get a sneak peek into how same issue was looked at in a very different manner by two, and the solutions suggested by both the parties differ. Why? Because of the way they have seen the problem. And that is something that is very important to remember while working in team also, that your perception, your understanding of a problem might differ. And there doesn't have to be a competition, but there has to be collaboration. So when we collaborate with different viewpoints and try to arrive at, as Nirupama had said yesterday, it's important to get it right, not be right. Yeah. And Yashwant mentions that they can collect a bit more maintenance fee in the time and then provide a complete solution. Yes. So I hope you sort of appreciated that how the same problem was looked at. And according to tenants' view, it might have been a very critical problem, but building managers just solve it as if it was a problem which needed all these things to be installed. So sometimes similar things can happen in software plays as well. So if you look at the stats of number of software projects failures, you'll not be surprised to find out that the project failure rate is quite high, is very high. And that the one reason behind that is absolute poor understanding and identification of the problem. So we have excellent people who can develop excellent softwares, but if people or software developers or even anyone in the research doesn't know how different elements of the software are speaking to each other and why they are speaking to each other, and what is the trigger, what are the dependencies, and what is the theoretical and conceptual reason behind interaction of different elements in the software, and what will be the outcome, and how to evaluate the software, then it is not difficult to imagine that it's a recipe for disaster. So let's take another example. Suppose you are working on an app. So you are in the company, your desired company, and you're working on an app, and the customer has raised an issue with the talkback feature in the app. I hope you are aware of the talkback feature. Are you guys aware of the talkback feature in the mobile?
No.
Okay. So most of the times, what is the reason for using the talkback feature? Who is it really useful for?
People with disabilities.
Yeah. So talkback feature usually helps read whatever view is selected on the mobile, and it is usually used for visually impaired people. And most of the apps they have also to be designed in such a manner that they are inclusive. Inclusive in sense that it is also can be used by people who do not have a perfect vision, but somehow they can also feel included in your app, and that is why app developers, and it is one of the principles of app development that it should be made inclusive. So talkback feature is one of the features included in the app. Now you are handling the talkback module, and a customer has raised an issue of the talkback feature in your particular app. So the thing is that when he or she clicks on any view in your app, the talkback feature is not working, and your manager has asked you to solve this problem. Now, as a young software developer in the company, you have two options. So if you would not, so there are two options. Either you can solve the problem locally on that particular view on the app for which the bug has been reported. Maybe you can, write a line of code or check why the talkback is not working using Toast or something, and see and fix it. Or you might try to understand that because talkback feature is a global feature on the mobile, and if the user has, put it on in the mobile, then it should technically work in your app also, irrespective of what the view is chosen. Now you're looking at a same situation, but there are two things going on inside your mind. And depending on these two things which are going inside of your mind, the solution that you design will be very different. Yes or no? So what would be your approach? What would be your approach? So would you directly go on to the code base and try to see what the issue is, what line of code is breaking? Or would you like to see that if it's a problem that is particular to your app, it's a more global problem, or because on the global level, problem should not exist, and what is wrong? So you would like to do a bit of problem diagnosis. So mostly when we are working on brownfield projects, most of the work is usually related to bug fixing, which are all called as particular language. Like in Samsung, we used to call them PLMs or Redmines. And so they used to solve. And so problem diagnosis becomes very important before you answer or solve the problem. However, sometimes what also can happen is that maybe it's a device specific problem, or maybe it's a problem originating in a device which was manufactured in a particular country and it is not replicating in any other devices. So all these kinds of things are very important to understand whether it's the right problem and for the problem diagnosis before you go on to solve the problem. So I hope you can appreciate the analogy between the slow elevator problem and the problems in software plays, that there are multiple ways to look at a particular bug in the system depending on who is looking, and always try to have this mindset of sustainable solutions which do not only solve problems on a local level, but which can also take care of the longer time problems that due to the code or bug that you have fixed or set of lines kind of code that you have written, it may not create problems in the future. And that is why you work on a specific problem, but you have a long-term mindset in your mind to have a sustainable solutions. This is important because if you end up fixing the bug locally, but even then it originates in some other view in the app, then it's not good. That means that basically you have not solved the problem. You have just solved the symptom. And solving the problem from the root and solving the problem symptom are two very different things. And for a long period of time, if your approach becomes to solve the symptom, then those problems will never really vanish. And your customers or your stakeholders might lose faith or reliability in your app because the problems have not really finished. So you should always be careful of not giving a symptomatic treatment of your software bugs or app bugs, but do a causal analysis of what is really the root of the problem. Because ultimately, repeated problems of similar kind can lead to loss of faith and reliability of our application and solution, which in long term will definitely translate to poor market value of whatever company or product you are working in. And that is why problem analysis is critical to long-term software sustainability and its reliability. And I'm aware that in software sector, time is a crucial component. So most of the times we are asked to finish off the bugs in a particular day or particular hours. So when we have that kind of time-bound delivery on us, it can be really very difficult to spend some time with problems. But trust me, you become better at it with practice. Because if you have solved 100 or 200 bugs, and then next time, if 250th bug comes, you know, because of your experience, what to do about it. But it's a journey that you have to make. So is the point clear till here? Any questions so far? Any confusions? So I hope I'm able to make a case for understanding the problem and looking at problem both in a short-term manner and a long-term manner. So with that, we come to identifying different aspects of the problem. I've already presented the slow elevator problem and the software bug problem. And this is slowly leading us to an aspect what I would call as reframing of a problem. So if a problem is looked at in a different manner, the solution not only saves money, but it also saves time and resources. And that can only come, so creative solutions can only come when you actually sit with a problem. So for example, in United States of America, most of the people own dogs. So most of the people, around 40% of the US households have dogs. But the problem with these pets is that most of the times they are often returned by their owners back to the shelter homes. So as a result of which the shelter homes are getting an influx of most of the pet dogs, and as a result of which they may not be able to take care of the dogs which are really in need of health or other pets. So they have a problem, and that is quite a severe problem in America. So it's a dog adoption problem. So what it says is, and through this example, I want to show you that how a different look or a different perception about the problem gives a completely different solution. And in long term, it's also cost effective and actually goes on to establish this company as one of the favored companies in the United States of America. So let's have a look at the problem. So dog adoption problem says that more than 3 million dogs enter every year at shelter and are put up for adoption. And welfare organizations have tried hard to raise the awareness on this issue. And the system is underfunded, but they still manage to put 1.4 million dogs back to the people. But a lot remains. So here's the question, is adoption the only way to solve the problem? So people are giving back their pets and they want to solve this problem of, overcrowding and overpopulation in their shelter homes, because of which they are not able to take care of other pets. So they put up the pets for adoption. So the question that comes up is adoption the only way to solve the problem? Any thoughts on that? So do you think putting up dogs for adoption is the only problem or the way to solve the problem? Most of us might think, yes, but that would happen if we have not spent time on the problem understanding. If we do not spend time in understanding the problem, we might think that, again, that tunnel vision, that adoption is the only way to solve the problem. However, not according to this lady. She is the founder of Downtown Dog Rescue Los Angeles. Her name is Lori Weiss. So what she did was, she reframed the problem. According to her, so what I mean by reframing is she sat with the problem, pondered over it, deliberated over it, and tried to understand it from different dimensions. When she tried to understand it from the different dimension, what she was trying to do actually was to go at the root cause of the problem. Because again, symptomatic treatment to problems may not solve them in long term. In fact, it might be more costly to solve problems in a symptomatic manner in long term than spending time to understand the problem in a causal manner and then working on it. So what she did was, she tried to understand that why, after all, owners who really loved their pets, they were returning their pets. What could have gone wrong? Why were they doing that? And then she did an analysis, and then she, found out that people who were surrendering their dogs, even though they were labeled as bad and heartless by others, but she knew that there is something else going on at a deeper level. And then she gradually understood that it was not a people problem, but it was more of a poverty problem. Now, most of you think that if they are so poor, why would they be having dogs or pets? But you must appreciate that poverty in India is very different from poverty in United States of America and in developed countries. So there are very different ways to define poverty and manifestation of poverty in developing and developed countries. So over there, people may have cars also, may have pets also, and still be poor because of certain other things. But nevertheless, what she found out was that they had to pay sometimes the landlord dog deposit also. If the deposit increased, they could no longer keep their dogs, or if their dog had some medical problems or some dog expenses increased and their family was not in a position to take care of that, they would surrender the dog. So from this analysis, she understood that it was not the problem that people were surrendering their dogs. It was basically a deeper problem. And she went out to solve that deeper problem. But again, it was not easy. So what she did was, and what her company did was, so whenever a family came to hand over their pet, their staff would ask, do you want to keep the pet? And 75% of the people who came to hand over their pets did not want to separate from them. If they would say that yes, they want to keep the pet because obviously they have that sort of relationship with their pet, the staff would resolve the problem using their network and knowledge of the system, such that the owners do not have to separate from their pet. Now, what happens when the separation is not resultant? Obviously, the influx of pets in the organization would decrease, and that would help the organization to focus on other pets which need their help much more than the surrendered pets. So can you see how a problem has been reframed, and because of which the solution has been reframed? So here in the solution, she and the firm are not talking about adoption at all. They are talking about an intervention to keep the pets closer to their owners if they want to keep them. So is this point clear about reframing of the problem and the example from the founder of the rescue organization? Okay, so just try to see that how a problem has been reframed. Now go back to your assignments, and in the next week I will be taking classes for your assignments also. Even though I have given very specific problems, every group has the liberty to reframe the problem, and ultimately such that it solves the main problem that we're talking about. So even in your groups, when you are doing stand-up meetings or discussing, try to see the different ways in which the problem can be reframed. So now the question arises, okay, she reframed the problem, but what help did it do in the end? So again, it not only did a monetary help, but it also helped the organization get recognized in the community and led to its a deeper relationship with the customers. For your reference, previously the organization was spending around $85 per pet. It was helping, but the new program brought the cost down to $60. So that's around $25 multiplied by the number of pets for which this was happening, and it would quickly escalate into a huge amount of money that the organization was able to save and then invest it in some other aspects. But this was just a monetary impact, which is useful, of course, but that was not just it. Such an approach had a wider impact on community. The families which were thinking that they don't have any solutions other than surrendering their pet, they got to know that in fact solution was available. They didn't have to part from their pets, that help was available. And so that led to a deeper relationship with the organization. And ultimately, trust me, when you're working in a company and when you have customers and stakeholders, there's a mistake that most people make, and that mistake is they try to win the war, but they fail in the battle. So sometimes people in some negotiation or some meeting, they might end up winning, but they lose out on a bigger aspect. But here, because of the solution, she not only nailed in the shorter aspect, but also led to a wider impact. And in fact, they found out that 75% of the owners who came to Shelter House wanted to keep the pet. That means out of those 75% owners, the staff asked them and helped them such that they could keep their pet, and then they could focus on the other set of pets that were arriving in their shelter homes. So I hope from the example of Slow Elevator, the America's dog adoption problem, and the talkback problem, I don't like the word convince, but somehow maybe I have made a case for you to, next time when you look at a problem, you'll try to look at it at different dimensions and different angles and try to reframe it, not forcefully, but see that is there any other way to look at the problems. And that is where team members come into picture, because the way different people look at different problems, same problem is quite different. So that is where reframing a problem can lead to creative solutions, as we had understood in the first slide of the lecture, that creative solutions often come from the alternative understanding of the problem. And reframing is not a very easy thing to do. Sometimes it can take iterative process, and it's not a one-time process at all. It takes time to spend with the problem and sit with it. And it definitely involves a lot of critical thinking, observation, and conversation and prototyping. So the founder would not have suddenly, bumped up on this idea that this is a problem of poverty. She would have done extensive analysis, because she would have understood that owners are coming up to shelter homes to drop their pets, but what is triggering the owners to come up? So the same question I asked you, what is triggering you to have that particular mindset of solution based approach to a project rather than thinking? And then you brought out some reasons. So always keep on asking why in a backtracking sort of manner until you arrive at a point where you can no longer ask why. And probably that is where you need to start investing your efforts. So, and sometimes reframing doesn't help at all, but it is an exercise that leads you to a deeper understanding of the problem. Any questions? So sometimes reframing won't help us, but we wouldn't know which problems can benefit from being reframed until we try. So maybe in the next lecture, I will talk about the 7 practices that are important, and I'll be using examples also. So 7 practices to reframe a problem and how to look at a problem from different angles. And because that definitely leads us to not only identifying whether the problem is the right problem to solve, but also to understand what could be the most cost-effective, time-saving, and convincing solutions to a problem. So I'll stop here. And if you have any questions, if you have any doubts, Please ask. Or you need any clarifications? So were you able to get some idea of looking at a problem or reframing a problem or looking at it from different points of view? Any questions? So in the next lecture, I will talk about, and we will discuss about, we will learn together about how to reframe a problem. And going forward, we will be talking about agile methodology. And because I think it is important to introduce agile methodology in the beginning of the lecture, so that you can follow it while working on your team projects. Any other questions or any other confusions you want any clarity on? So if there one thing that you want, I would want you to take back from this lecture would be developing a new lens and a deeper lens to look at a problem. So next time, and BTech projects are an excellent opportunity to exploit all these learnings, that try to do something meaningful and in depth rather than only something that has a solution based approach. Solution is important, but that problem should lead to another problem and another problem, and that's how you improve the curve of your learning, which is the most important thing, be it a student or a professional career. So I'll stop here, and please write to me if you have any confusions regarding anything. I will be happy to answer your questions or confusions.